Hello, my name is Chen Choo, and I'm a senior from Jakarta Intercultural School. Today, I'll be talking about fixing Indonesia's carbon market through code and courage. Imagine an invisible ATM floating above our country. From the massive tropical rainforest in Borneo to the deep peatlands in Sumatra, Indonesia has the natural capacity to absorb over 113 billion tons of carbon. In the global fight against climate change, we are sitting on a gold mine. However, to access this gold mine, we need to use a special currency called carbon credits. For those who might not know, what exactly are carbon credits? Think of carbon credits like a strict diet. Governments tell major industries that they're only allowed to pollute to a certain amount. If these industries pollute over this amount, they have to buy carbon credits from people who have done the heavy lifting to clean up their environment and gain carbon credits. One carbon credit is equal to exactly 1 ton of CO2 removed from the environment or prevented from entering the environment. To better understand carbon credits, let me take you through the 4-step life cycle that I've created. Firstly, people plant or do any other activity that removes carbon credits, removes carbon emissions from the environment. For example, an organization could plant a mangrove forest in Bali. Secondly, an auditor would come in and make sure that what they're doing is real and that what they're doing is actually removing carbon emissions from the environment. Thirdly, once everything is verified, the auditor will credit the organization by giving them carbon credits. And fourth, the organization can now sell the carbon credits to a overpolluting company for money. And then the organization can now use that money to reinvest into further carbon credit projects, which brings us back to step 1. Sounds like the perfect plan, right? Sounds like the perfect system. That is exactly why Indonesia launched IDX Carbon in 2023. So why exactly am I here? Well, in 2025, the IEEFA, the Institute of Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, has put out a report that shows that the Indonesian carbon market has practically flatlined in 2025. The Indonesian carbon credit cost only $4, while in Europe, they cost upwards of 70. Why is nobody buying our carbon credits? I was thinking about this while I was ordering GoFood the other day. And I was ordering martabak. And one thing I realized is I was able to always know when the food was being created, when the driver was near me, and the moment the driver dropped off my food. Yet, when it comes to tracking millions of tons of planet-heating gas, we rely on overlapping government ministries, delayed audits, and confusing paperwork. As someone passionate about technology, I realized we are using a 20th century bureaucracy to solve a 21st century crisis. Global investors are not buying our carbon credits because of the issue of trust. They don't trust our carbon credits. They ask, how do we know the tree was actually planted? How do we know the tree is actually reducing carbon emissions? Without international certification and transparency, our carbon credits are just empty promises. But what if we could guarantee that trust? This is where decentralized ledger technology, most common of which is blockchain, comes in. Forget cryptocurrency for a second. Blockchain, at its core, is a digital ledger that is completely transparent and public and is almost impossible to hack or alter. Imagine a system where your carbon credit data and your carbon project data doesn't just go to a bureaucrat's desk to sit in a folder for 6 months, but is rather uploaded straight onto a public blockchain. Every audit, every transaction is completely open for the world to see. The result is no hidden files and no double counting. An investor from Japan or some European country could instantly enter this ledger and instantly verify the exact origin of their carbon credit. We solve the problem of trust instantly by allowing the information to be available to the public and completely transparent. However, I've realized something as well. I realized something, the harsh truth of this. Code cannot change the law. The IEEFA has highlighted another reason why the Indonesian carbon credit market is failing. It's not just bad tech, it's bad rules. You see, the Indonesian carbon credit market is failing because governments are putting the emission caps way too high so that no company actually ends up exceeding them. And if no companies end up exceeding them, they never have to buy carbon credits. If they never buy carbon credits, the carbon credit producers are de-incentivized to continue their work because they know no one's going to buy their carbon credits. Now, even if we fix all of these domestic rules, we still hit an international wall. In order to attract global investors, we need an international stamp of approval like the internationally accepted Vera standard. But the problem with Vera is that it is very Western-centric, meaning it favors Western countries in the carbon credit production process, and not countries like Indonesia. For example, an Indonesian carbon credit producer might decide that they want to produce biochar, a great way to absorb carbon from the environment and earn carbon credits. However, to transport it, they need to ship it from island to island because we live in an archipelago. But the Western-centric rules of Vera prohibit the use of ships in any activities relating to generating carbon credits. Because of this, they do this because they think we are traveling large distances from country to country to transport our biochar. However, in reality, we are only transporting it from island to island, which is a lot less polluting than transporting from country to country. Because our local intricacies don't meet the Western mold of Vera, we are deemed ineligible for using these carbon credits. Therefore, we need policy action on a global scale. We need internationally negotiated standards based on the regional context of every region. For example, an ASEAN-specific carbon standard could help help ASEAN because it could have the same strict regulations as Vera, but but be adapted to the economic and geographical realities of our region. Therefore, we need a collaboration between these two generations Firstly, policymakers, and to all the policymakers and industry leaders in the room, we need you to have the courage to lower the emission caps and stop protecting the polluters. We need you to have the courage to fight for an ASEAN-specific carbon standard that respects our geographical reality. And to the youth, the innovators, and my peers, we need to champion the code, the digital infrastructure to keep them accountable. We need to create the transparent systems and decentralized ledgers that will allow us to track and verify every single ton of carbon in the environment. Indonesia has the power and the natural resources to be able to lead the green economy in the fight against climate change. The invisible ATM is just waiting for us to access it. We need to stop relying on the broken bureaucracy and mismatched Western standards. Give us the right policies, and we'll create the transparent technology needed to save our home. Thank you.